For more than 1,000 years, the Roman Empire was, without a doubt, the superpower of the ancient world. We're talking legendary armies, incredible feats of engineering, and a political system that literally shaped history. So how does something that massive, an empire that defined the world, just disappear? Well, in this explainer, we're going to put the pieces of that puzzle together.
And that right there is the most important thing to get. The end of Rome wasn't like flipping a switch. It was a slow, grinding process. You could call it a death by 1,000 cuts from problems that were festering for generations.
So, to really understand how it all fell apart, we first have to see Rome when it was at its absolute zenith. So picture this. It's the year 117 CE, Emperor Trajan is in charge, and the empire looks completely, totally unbreakable.
Just look at that number, 70 million people. I mean, let that sink in for a second. That was a huge chunk of the entire world's population at the time, all living under one flag, from the chilly forests of Britain all the way to the scorching deserts of Arabia. The scale was just immense.
And these were the pillars that held the whole thing up, and each one made the other stronger. The famous Roman roads, they let armies move fast. Those armies, they enforced Roman law. And that stable law, it let trade flourish across the known world. Everything was connected, and the system seemed perfect. But, and this is the key, even here, at the peak of its power, tiny little cracks were already starting to form, right beneath the surface.
And see, that's the thing. The first major problems weren't invaders at the gate. No, the real issues were internal. Long before barbarian armies were a serious threat, Rome was beginning to rot from the inside out, starting with its money and its politics. This right here, this tells you everything you need to know about the economic problem. See, Rome had stopped expanding, which meant no new gold and silver was flowing in from conquered lands. So to pay the bills, emperors started, well, cheating. They mixed cheaper metals into their silver coins, until pretty soon the coins had barely any silver at all. This kicked off runaway inflation, where your money was worth less and less every single day. Trust in the currency just evaporated, and the whole economic engine began to seize up. And at the exact same time, the politics were an absolute disaster. Get this, in just 50 years, Rome bombed through more than 20 emperors. It was a revolving door of assassinations and civil wars. The government wasn't focused on actually ruling the empire, it was just a bloody game of survival for whoever sat on the throne. And by the time the dust settled, the empire was left scarred and fundamentally weaker.
So, faced with all this economic and political chaos, the Emperor Diocletian realized something had to give. The empire was just too big for one person to govern effectively. So he made a radical call. He split the whole thing in two, hoping that would make it more manageable.
But what this did was create a tale of two very different empires. The East, with its new capital at Constantinople, was the rich, urban, and stable side of the family. It was much easier to defend. The West, though, the West was poorer, more rural, and it was sitting right in the path of all these growing threats on its borders. The split might have made sense on paper, but it left the western half dangerously exposed.
And believe me, that pressure was building fast. For centuries, Rome had kept these tribes in check, but then everything changed with the arrival of the Huns. Their brutal push out of Central Asia was like the first domino to fall. It created this massive shockwave, forcing other tribes, like the Goths, to flee for their lives. And they fled right into Roman territory. So you've got this rotting foundation on the inside, and now you have this massive hammer pounding on it from the outside. It was only a matter of time before the walls started to crumble, and Rome's legendary military invincibility was about to be put to the ultimate test.
The first huge shockwave hits in 378 CE. A huge group of Goths, running from the Huns, had been allowed to cross into the empire, but they were treated horribly by the local Roman officials. We're talking starvation, exploitation, abuse, you name it. So what did they do? They rebelled, leading to a massive battle near the city of Adrianople. The result? An absolute catastrophe for Rome. A Roman emperor was actually killed in the battle, and a huge part of the Eastern army was completely wiped out. The psychological impact was immense. This wasn't just another border raid. A barbarian army had annihilated a Roman field army. The myth of Roman invincibility? It was shattered right there on that battlefield. And you have to remember, The army facing these new threats wasn't the same legendary fighting machine it used to be. Discipline had slipped. Even worse, Rome got so desperate for soldiers that it started hiring the very barbarians it was supposed to be fighting. I mean, how can you defend an empire when your own soldiers aren't really loyal to the empire? They fought for a paycheck, and their allegiance could switch to whoever paid them more.
And all of this, it leads to a moment that, for centuries, was just unthinkable. In the year 410 CE, the Goths, under a leader named Alaric, marched all the way down into Italy and laid siege to the city of Rome itself.
And when those gates finally fell, the city was sacked. Now, the empire itself didn't collapse that day, not technically, but the damage to its prestige, it was irreparable. The symbolic heart of the empire, the eternal city, had been violated. And now the whole world knew. Rome could bleed.
Yeah, after the shock of 410, the decline of the Western Empire just sped up. Its authority completely crumbled, its provinces were lost one by one, and its end really became a matter of when, not if.
And the official end? It comes in 476 CE. And it wasn't some huge epic final battle. It was more like a whimper. A Germanic leader named Odoacer simply removed the last Western Roman emperor from power, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus. There was no battle for Rome. The institution was already so hollowed out, it just stopped existing.
So, when you put it all together, you see there wasn't one single thing that killed Rome. It was the perfect storm, really. Yet all these internal weaknesses hollowing it out from the inside, constant external pressure hammering it from the outside, and deep structural problems that made the whole thing unstable to begin with.
And this is so important to remember. Only half the empire fell. The eastern part, which we now call the Byzantine Empire, kept going for another 1,000 years. Why? Well, it's pretty simple. It was wealthier, more stable, and way easier to defend. It just didn't have that fatal combination of weaknesses that brought down the West.
But here's the thing. Even though the Western Roman state disappeared, the idea of Rome, that never went away. Our modern legal systems, many of our languages, our architecture, even our ideas about democracy, so much of that has roots that you can trace directly back to Rome. In that sense, Rome never truly fell. It just transformed into something new.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. The fall of Rome is more than just an ancient history lesson. It's a warning, isn't it? It's a powerful story that shows us that the greatest threats to any power often don't come from outside forces, but from the cracks that are allowed to form within.